Most of us spend our entire lives doing this one thing wrong: setting goals, making elaborate plans, dreaming big, only to just fall short. Time and time again. You know that feeling when you're staring at a to-do list that somehow only ever seems to get longer? You're completely overwhelmed by tasks you swore you were going to finish last week. We've all been there. But why is it that, despite our absolute best intentions, so few of us actually cross the finish line? To understand the massive scale of this problem, just look at this number: 95%. That is the staggering average failure rate for our goals. I mean, think about that for a second. Research shows that an incredible 92% of New Year's resolutions just crash and burn. And if we look at people aiming for the absolute top, like aspiring professional athletes, that failure rate shoots up to 98%. So across the board, roughly 95% of us are falling short of the really big things we set out to do. Okay, let's dive into this. Why do so many of us fail? It's incredibly tempting to think, oh, I'm just not trying hard enough, or maybe that we lack some special, secret genetic code for success. But the truth, the real reasons we stumble are deeply wired into our psychology. Today, we're going to look at the underlying cognitive causes of our failures, and much more importantly, how science says we can actually fix them. Well, first off, let's relieve a little bit of that guilt you might be carrying around. Have you ever noticed how a personal project literally always takes twice as long as you originally thought it would? That right there is called the planning fallacy. Our planning brain actually sabotages us. It's like a mental blind spot where we drastically underestimate the time required to complete a task. And what happens when our wildly unrealistic timelines aren't met? We get totally demoralized. We think we're failing, so we quit prematurely. We don't even realize the goal was fine. Our timeline was just a mental error. And then, when we do inevitably stumble, we fall victim to something called trait ascription bias. What's that? Basically, it's this fascinating cognitive trap where we assume other people have these stable, inherent traits for success, but we view our own qualities as completely lacking or variable. We unfairly compare ourselves to others, drawing these negative, self-fulfilling conclusions about our own character. We tell ourselves, well, they're just naturally disciplined, and I'm just lazy. We blame who we are instead of looking objectively at the methods we're using. So the crucial point is this: we need a massive paradigm shift here. Relying on pure willpower and conscious motivation is basically a losing game. As the author James Clear famously observed, you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. The purpose of setting goals is simply to win one game, but the purpose of building systems, that's to continue playing the game entirely. This leads us to a huge misconception about how we operate on a daily basis. We think we're making these highly conscious, deliberate choices all day long. Actually, scratch that. We are on autopilot way more than we'd ever like to admit. Because of this, conscious motivation is a terrible long-term strategy for change. I mean, it simply runs out. Instead, the real secret is environment design. It's about crafting the physical world around us so that the right choices just happen automatically, without even thinking about them. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is this astounding organ donor study from Europe, which shows just how powerful this is. Look at Denmark and Sweden. These are two countries with very similar geographic and cultural backgrounds. Yet Denmark has a 4% organ donor rate, while Sweden is sitting at a massive 86%. No way, right? Why the huge gap? It wasn't a difference in morals or education or motivation. It was quite literally just the form they received in the mail. Denmark used an opt-in form, where you have to check a box to join. Sweden used an opt-out form, where you check a box to leave. The context completely dictated the behavior, overpowering conscious choice entirely. Which brings us to this incredibly powerful realization. Your environment is the default option to which you're assigned. Seriously, think about your daily life for a second. If you see a cookie sitting on the kitchen counter, you're probably going to eat it. If your living room couch faces directly toward the television, you're probably going to turn it on the second you sit down. We simply react to the visual cues surrounding us. So, we need to take control of those cues by adjusting the number of steps it takes to actually do something. The golden rule is simple: reduce the friction for good habits and increase the friction for bad ones. Want to eat 30% more vegetables? Serve your food on dark green plates. Want to watch less TV? Put the remote in an entirely different room so you literally have to get up to get it. Want to work out in the morning? Lay your gear out the night before. You've got to give yourself practical, immediate steps to make bad behaviors harder and good behaviors completely frictionless. But what happens when we do absolutely need to focus on a specific target? Well,
we have to be super careful about the type of goal we set. Obsessing purely over performance goals, like hitting an exact number, can actually cause this intense tunnel vision. In one famous psychological study, people were asked to count basketball passes between players in white shirts. They were so laser-focused on this performance goal that they completely missed a woman carrying an open umbrella walking right through the middle of the game. Sometimes, setting a learning goal, which is a goal to acquire knowledge or master a skill, is just far more effective because it keeps your brain open to new information.
And this brilliantly illustrates why mastering our day-to-day habits is the real key to achieving those longer-term performance goals. Even elite military organizations, like the New Zealand Defence Force shown right here, recognize that overcoming complex behaviors requires robust, automated tactics. They know for a fact that in highly demanding situations, relying on willpower alone is a strategy that's absolutely sure to fail. You need systems. So, how do we scientifically build these robust systems? We use the ultimate framework for behavioral change, mental contrasting with implementation intentions. Yeah, I know, let's just call it MCII for short. This is a highly validated self-regulation strategy. It essentially combines realistically visualizing the obstacles in your way with a very specific if-then plan. And guys, this isn't just theory. A massive meta-analysis of nearly 16,000 participants across multiple studies proved that this exact framework significantly enhances goal attainment. Let's move to and see how this builds out in practice. Here's how you can put the MCI framework to work today in 3 really simple steps. First, define your desired future. Like, what do you actually want to achieve? Second, identify the real obstacles in your current reality. Don't just sit around fantasizing about success. Look hard at what is actively going to get in your way. And third, create an if-then plan to overcome that exact obstacle. This if-then plan is your implementation intention. You literally decide in advance, if situation Y arises, then I will perform goal-directed behavior Z. By deciding your exact reaction before the obstacle even happens, you completely remove the need for willpower in the moment. For real-world example, if your goal is to get fit, your plan might be, if a commercial break appears on the TV, then I will get up and do 10 push-ups. You are literally programming your own automatic response. The beauty of all this is its sheer simplicity. It's a concise, low-cost, and incredibly effective self-regulation strategy. And the scientific data, like the studies published here in Frontiers in Psychology, absolutely backs this up as a vital supplement to plain, ineffective goal setting. Just wishing for an outcome? It isn't enough. Combining that wish with a mental contrast of reality and a concrete if-then plan, that is what bridges the gap between where you are and where you want to be. Ultimately, the whole shebang ties into what James Clear outlines as the 4 laws of behavior change. If you want to build an identity-based habit that actually sticks, you must make the cue obvious, make the craving attractive, make the response easy, and make the reward satisfying. By managing these 4 levers through your environment design and your if-then planning, you quickly start to realize that the really big things, they just come from tiny, repeated decisions.
Which brings us to our final and probably most memorable takeaway. True long-term thinking is goalless thinking. Ultimate success isn't about reaching a single finish line and just stopping. Not at all. It's about an endless cycle of refinement and continuous improvement. It is your commitment to the daily process and to the environments and systems you build around yourself that will ultimately determine your lifelong progress. So, I'm going to leave you with this provocative question to chew on. How will you redesign your environment today? It is time to stop blaming your character, stop relying on fleeting bursts of motivation, and start taking immediate, systematic action. Change your space, write down your if-then plans, and just watch how much easier it becomes to finally achieve what you set out to do. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll see you next time.